I am Lauren Mitchell, and welcome to today's presentation on traditional versus online learning, particularly first-year composition, but actually most of this material applies to any subject matter. In any case, we are comparing traditional and online learning. First, the similarities of the traditional and online environment. Both have a classroom, both have a teacher or an instructor, both have students or learners. So, in that sense, one is virtual, one is in real life, but they share the same features. The other feature they share is that they're both effective. That is, it results in learning competency in students who can earn a degree. The traditional college student is generally younger than his or her adult counterpart, lives on campus, and therefore is not encumbered by the responsibilities of job and or family. While on campus, living in a structured environment, living in a dormitory, eating in the cafeteria, even commuters still enjoy some of the benefits there, say the library, the business office, even hanging out in the hallway outside of class, or visiting a tutor in the learning center. And another thing that sets the online adult learner apart from the traditional college student is that the online adult learner has academic, psychological, and life characteristics that are different than those of traditional students. For example, the online learner is not there to study subjects. He or she is there to solve problems. This problem solving is tied in with the immediate application of knowledge, most often in the work environment, and understandably that the learning is related often to career advancement. And now we'll look at two advantages of each type of education, online and traditional. And one of the greatest advantages of traditional college education is the inherent network of support, which provides the student with interaction, of course, with the instructor, face-to-face interaction, with fellow students, with others that a conventional student may go to for assistance, such as the librarian, a tutor at the learning center. And another thing about this support network is that the response, especially from classmates and from the instructor, is often immediate. That is, a student raises her hand and she gets an answer right away. If the student still has a question, usually the instructor can tell just by her body language, by the expression on her face, and he will answer and clarify. Now, try that in an online classroom. Now, of course, e-learning has its own set of advantages, and we'll just look at two right now. First is if there are no limitations on time and place. You can go to school whenever and wherever you wish, as long as you have your computer or your device and internet reception. But no more getting up at 7:30 in the morning for that dreaded 8 a.m. class. You can go to class in your pajamas. No one will know. And a closely related advantage to that is that students can determine their own educational processes. And this is something that has proven very effective for adult learners. Adult learners are, in essence, in charge of their own education. It's self-directed learning outside of the classroom. They diagnose their own needs, they locate their own resources, they implement their own learning experiences, and they evaluate their own work as well as that of the instructor and how well he or she has assisted in the learning process. Now, on to several disadvantages for each method. The traditional classroom, the disadvantage is that it's synchronous. That is, it's set. It's less flexible. You do not get to decide when and where the learning occurs. That is settled for you. Usually it's something like Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday at a predetermined time lasting for an hour and 15 minutes or thereabouts. You have to be in that classroom at that time or you miss out. Speaking of the classroom, it's most often set up like a small theater or auditorium with students lined up in rows from the front to the back with the instructor down front and center in the spotlight. And that's called the presentational teaching method or the lecture model, and it's all about the teacher. He or she tells students what they're supposed to learn, maybe writing some bullet points on the blackboard or showing some on an overhead projector. Students sit quietly and passively, supposedly soaking in the information, which is great, except it's not. It's boring, and students don't soak in knowledge like that. In fact, some estimates are that as much as 60% of the lesson content is forgotten almost as soon as students walk out of the classroom. Now, of course, the online classroom is not without its foibles as well. It's number one on the list is what we call the digital divide. That's the fancy term for students not being familiar with all the technology required to successfully navigate within the digital learning environment. The other is lack of learner support. One of the major complaints of online learners is that they feel isolated. They miss interacting with their peers, with the instructor, being able to visit a tutor. Let's face it, clicking on the box that says Student Success Center is not quite the same as walking through the door of the Student Success Center and seeing your favorite tutor. And also, lack of support for online students can also mean a lack of support from family at home or from the workplace. In fact, sometimes the workplace is at odds with the student, the adult student learner. Regardless, this has been a quick look at comparison and contrast of the online learning environment with the traditional learning environment, with the focus especially on adult learners. And I hope you have found something interesting. Although adult learning is more closely associated with the online version, the adult learning theories apply equally to both online and the traditional method. For example, Knowles says that adult learners are aware of why and what they need to learn, and that their learning environment needs to take into account their diverse educational background and goals, and to reflect their life experiences, all of which they bring to the table. Those things can occur in either the online or the conventional setting. Now, even McCluskey's theory of margin, where students, their learning is affected by the load, the stressors that they bear, that's primarily aimed at the online learners with their jobs and family. However, the stressors also apply in the conventional classroom. They just may be of a different type. Likewise, adult learning theory can be applied in either setting. For example, learners could be asked to share and draw on their life experiences. The classroom could be structured around either classroom could be structured around the immediate application of knowledge to real life. It can focus on problem solving instead of subjects in particular. These are all tenets of Knowles' theory of andragogy, and with parts of McCluskey's theory of margin thrown in there as well. And some other adult learning methods that would easily adapt to the either classroom, online or traditional, is using individualized or small group learning. Is the instructor acting as a facilitator rather than the teacher who imposes his will upon or her will upon the students? That is, the learning can be student-centered. It can occur outside the classroom. What about the use of assistive technology? That's a feature of adult learning. In multiple teaching methods. So there you go. And I'll share a couple of examples of how learning methods that can work in either environment. For example, the learning starts on the first day with introductions. That is a way not just to say hello and introduce oneself, but it's a way to gather and share information that helps establish and create a learning community, which facilitates effective learning. It's done in both environments. Now, of course, a little bit differently. In the online environment, it's going to take place on a discussion board with typed answers. In person, it's going to be standing up and giving your name. And the instructor maybe has a little bit of an advantage in the conventional classroom because he or she can coax a little bit more information immediately out of students who perhaps are reluctant to share some. Now, I'll give you another one as well. In a writing class, so we often do genre identification. In an online class, that is going to occur. Let me start with the conventional class. The students are going to break up into small groups. They're going to define genre. What is genre? Then they're going to leave the classroom and go out and find examples of different genres, and maybe take photographs and come back and on their iPhones and share them with the class. Maybe a picture of a screenshot of an email or a picture of someone reading a book or a newspaper, perhaps. Now, in the online environment, that's going to be done again on a discussion board, but students can still share screenshots. It might be a little bit problematic of using a photo as an attachment, but you know what? Then use a link and send us to a photograph of someone reading a newspaper or a book. Or a link of the different digital types of genres that there are. The bottom line here is that most everything taught in the traditional classroom can also be taught online, just in a different way. And that certainly applies for adult learning theory. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have found something useful.